Hi, I'm Richard Morais, Senior Minister at Unity of Phoenix Spiritual Center, and I want to thank you for visiting our website and for tuning in to today's message. If you feel inspired by today's talk, I really encourage you to make a donation by hitting that button below and making a contribution to this ministry. It'll allow us to continue these messages online and to do the great work we do here at Unity of Phoenix, which is to inspire people to live better lives. So thanks for tuning in, thanks for your support, and we hope to see you at a Sunday real soon.
So our affirmation earlier was, I am the master of my own destiny. How many of you are the masters of your own destiny? A couple of you? Okay, I'm going to ask that question again later, and I want to see every hand up. Every day as our life unfolds, moment by moment, we can either be the masters of our own destiny or we can procrastinate and let someone else do it. That's no fun. We can allow fear, resentment, or limitation to take over, or we can go boldly forth, savoring every moment as we create each new day of our life. My talk is entitled, How Free Do You Want to Be? How free do you want to be? You know, the things that hold us back are really subtle. We may not even be aware of them. They're things that stop us from being our greater good. And sometimes we argue for our limitations. We say, well, I just can't do any better, There were these two monks, and they were walking in the woods. One was a senior master monk, and he had a novice monk with him. And they had to go from one monastery to another monastery. And it was a really far distance. It was going to take all day. And they were walking in the rain, one of those cold, drizzly rains that just get you bone cold. And they're walking, and they're walking. And they come to a stream. And the stream has some big rocks that someone has placed in there so you can walk across the stream. But because it's been raining, the stream has a lot more water in it than it normally did. And the water was washing up over the rocks. And there was a young woman standing there. She wanted to cross the stream, but she was afraid to cross by herself. She had this big pack she was carrying. So the elder of the two monks said, ma'am, can I help you? And she said, well, I'd really like to cross the stream, but I'm afraid. And he said, well, could I pick you up and carry you across? She said, oh, please do. And he gently picked her up, and he walked across the stones very carefully, put her on the other side, blessed her for safe travels on the way. She went on her way, and the two monks went on their way. They walked for a couple of hours, and the older monk could tell that something was going on with the younger monk. But he waited. He was very patient. Finally, the younger monk said, we're almost at the monastery. He said, and when we get there, you're going to have to do penance because you picked up a woman, and it's our rule that you're not allowed to touch a woman. And the older monk said, yes, my son, you may be right. However, I picked her up and put her down. You've been carrying her in your heart and your mind for the last 2 hours. So what are you carrying in your heart and mind that's limiting you? Are you arguing for your limitations? Are you doubting that you can do something? Because if you're doubting that you have the ability to do something, you're right. And what are you worrying about? Mark Twain said something like that, we worry about hundreds of things that never could even possibly happen during the day. And I have some people in my life who are master worriers. They come up with the most creative things to worry about. I don't even know where they come from. Holy cow, I don't want to spend my time worrying. And some of us, one of our limitations is lack. We have a lack consciousness. Not enough to eat, not enough money, not enough love, not enough joy, not enough peace, la, 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 la. I don't even want to hear it because you're creating the world by what you're thinking. Is that what you want to think? I don't think so. And some of us are afraid. A woman told me the other day, and I thought this woman was pretty strong and, positive and all of that. She said she doesn't fly anymore because she's afraid that if she flies that the airplane will crash. Well, we all know statistically that you have more of a chance of getting an accident and getting hurt driving on the 101 in rush hour traffic than you do on an airplane, right? Sometimes our fears absolutely control our whole world. They color what we do and what we won't do. Let them go. You don't need them anymore. And we all have these excuses, right? I'm too tall, that's not one of mine. I'm too short, I'm not going there. I'm too fat, I'm too thin, I'm too poor, I'm too rich. Wait a minute, is anybody in this room too rich? I didn't think so. Or maybe I'm not in good enough shape so I can go hiking up that mountain, this Lookout Mountain back here. Or maybe I don't hear as well as I used to. You know, it's time to declare our independence from all of our lack and limitation and negative thinking. It's time to be as free as you want to be. You get to choose how free you want to be. There's a little boy, he was 8 years old, and he lived in a really small town where it was still safe to walk around, you know. And he walked downtown, and he walked past the pet store. And there was a sign on the pet store that said, puppies for sale. He'd always wanted a puppy. He goes into the pet store, and the man says, hi, son, can I help you? Yes, sir, I see that you have puppies for sale. How much are they? And the man said, well, they're between $30 and $50. And the little boy was kind of crestfallen. He looked in his pocket, and he had $2.37. And he says, well, he said, I only have a little money, but could I see the puppies? And the man whistled this loud whistle, and the mama dog comes out with these 5 little adorable puff balls, little tiny little puppies. And the last one was kind of limping. It followed the other ones. And the little boy said, sir, what's wrong with that puppy? And the pet store man said, oh, I've had him checked out by a vet, but he's got something wrong with his hip. And he'll never be able to run or, you know, play with you like a normal puppy would. And he goes, that's the one I want. That's the puppy for me. And so the pet store owner said, well, all right, well, that's okay, but I'll just give him to you because, you know, I don't want you to pay for one that's you know, not completely right. And the little boy got his hand on his hip, and he said, I want to tell you something. That puppy is worth the same amount of money that all the rest of these puppies are worth, and I'm going to pay full price for him. Here's my $2.37. My allowance is $1 a week, and I'm going to come back every week until I have him paid off. And the man kind of had tears in his eyes, you know. And the little boy leaned down, and he pulled up the pants leg, and he had a twisted ankle, and he had a really heavy brace on his ankle. And the little boy said to the pet store owner, you know, I don't run very fast either, and that little puppy needs somebody that understands him. We're gonna have a great time together. And I'm 100% sure that when that little boy grew up, he had a great, big, open, compassion heart, and he did great things in the world. Instead of arguing for our limitations, can we take what we are and use what we have and magnify the world? Our very own senior minister, Reverend Richard Moraz, doesn't have 1 brace on his leg. He has 2 braces on his legs. And I've known him about 6 years, and I've never seen him anything except with a smile on his face. He compliments the staff. He's a joy to work with. He gets on airplanes. He goes to Europe, and he goes to Canada, and he goes to Hawaii. That's the kind of life I want to live. I don't want to magnify my limitations. I want to live fully and completely into my highest potential. My father, who was born in 1913, when he was 16 years old, somewhere around 1930, he fell off a swing, and he broke his knee. Actually, I don't even remember now which knee it was. He broke his knee, and he was hospitalized for almost 3 months because he got something called osteomyelitis. Very serious bone disease. They leave the wound open, and I won't tell you how they treated it back then because it was really, really gross. The doctor came to him and said, you know, son, you're going to lose your leg above the knee. You might as well just be prepared for it. And he said, doctor, I don't like your diagnosis. Get out of here. I'm going to walk out of here on my own power. My dad had a really nice stubborn streak in him. And 3 months later, he did walk out of there on his own power. Now, he was only 16, as I said, and he wasn't finished growing, and that leg didn't grow anymore. The other leg grew another 1.5 inches. So through his whole life, he wore a shoe that was built up 1.5 inches. But I don't remember which shoe that was. He was my father, and I couldn't tell you which one it was because there was nothing disabled about my father. He could climb a ladder. He could go up on the roof. He had a shell of a house built. He put in the plumbing and the electrical and the drywall all by himself. He had a race car. He actually got to drive a race car on the Indianapolis 500 track. He was not disabled at all, and when he died at 96 years old, right after Christmas, he had each of his 3 children and his grandson all got a stained glass bird that he made. He learned to do stained glass when he was 75 years old. That's the kind of life I want to live. I never want to argue for my limitations. I want to keep going as long as I can go and keep being a contribution. So how free do you want to be? How free do you want to be? Some of us have things about us that maybe they're not quite perfect, especially as we get older. As most of you know, I had a hip replacement in August. I've completely forgotten about it. I don't let it slow me down. We all have something, right? There was an old woman, and she lived in the jungle. She had no electricity. She had no water. And every morning she got these 2 big clay pots, and she tied them onto a branch and put them over her shoulders. She walked down to the spring down below her house. She filled up both of the pots, turned around, walked back up the hill with these heavy pots full of water. Let's see, a gallon of water is what, like 7 pounds, right? It's heavy. She walked up, but the pot on the right had a crack in it. And as she walked up the hill, the water splashed out the crack onto the path. And when they got to the top of the hill, the pot that didn't have the crack in it said to the crack pot, yeah, you know, you're only doing half of your job. I'm bringing a full load of water, and you're not doing your job. And pretty soon the crack pot started to feel really bad about himself. He started to have low self-esteem, and he thought, I'm not doing my job. What am I going to do? And finally one day, this has gone on for a long time, he said to the old woman, he said, I just want to apologize. You know, I know I have a crack in me, and I know by the time I get to the top of the hill, I'm only half full of water. I'm so sorry. It's the best I can do. And she said to the pot, you know, have you ever noticed that once we start back up the hill from the creek, that on that side, on the right side of the path, your side of the path, it's full of wildflowers. I recognized you had a crack in you. I knew you would spill water out, so I planted wildflower seeds. And as we walk along and the water spills out, you water the flowers. Your crack, your limitation, has created great beauty in my house. See the flowers there on the kitchen table? So sometimes that thing about us that might not be quite perfect is the thing that's the very best about who we are. It's the thing that makes us be a contribution to other people in our lives. We may not even know how we help other people by who we are and what we teach by the way that we live our lives. Have you ever considered that your shortcomings could be the thing that gives you the most character about who you are? Have you ever considered that that may endear you to other people? Have you ever considered that you're serving people in a way that you're not even aware of? We're here to be a contribution. How many ways can you think of a defect in you that's really an asset? I'll ask you again, how free do you want to be? Well, I want to be really free. I want to live my life, whatever is left of my life, I want to live it fully and boldly and beautifully. So will you play a game with me? It's an imagination game, so you don't need anything. I'm gonna imagine that I give you a ballpoint pen. And it's the kind of pen that you can't tell how much ink is in it. So you don't know if there's a little or if there's a lot. And with that pen, you get to write the story of the rest of your life. Okay, now the pen could run dry in just a couple of lines. You'd be done, right? Or you could choose not to do anything at all with the pen. You could stick it in a drawer and ignore it until it ran out of ink, right? You could do nothing with it at all. I didn't say there were any rules to this game, right? You never know what's going to happen in your life when you're writing the story of their life. Instead of picking it up, you could put it up on a shelf. Those are the procrastinators in the group. Or you could give it away so that you don't have to have the responsibility of writing your own story. You'll let somebody else do it. Those are the abdicators, right? If you decide to use it, what will you do with it? How will you play this imaginary game? Would you plan and plan and plan what you were going to write before you ever wrote a word? Sometimes planners just plan. They don't ever get anything done. They never become a doer. Or would your plans be so big and so extensive that you never get around to actually writing anything? You know, sometimes the great big thinkers never become a doer. They just stay in their head and think all the time. Would you take the pen in your hand and put it to paper, and whatever came in your mind, just write it down as fast as you could absolutely write it down, just to see where the words would take you? Those are the intuitive ones. Those are the ones who listen to that still, small voice within of the Holy Spirit. And how can you go wrong with the Holy Spirit, right? Would you write cautiously and carefully, as if the pen might run dry at any moment? Well, those are the ones who are lack thinkers, thinking there's never enough. What would you write about? Love, hate, war, peace? I don't know. Write about anything comes to your mind. Would you write the history of your life, a biography? Those are the history buffs, right? Would you write something to please yourself, or would you write something to please other people? Both of those will sell. Think about that. Would you write timidly or brilliantly bold? Those of you who write boldly knows that boldness calls forth unlimited faith in God's grace for success in every moment. Go bold, people. Would you write with a fancy cursive? Oh, you're the artist, right? Or would you doodle or sketch or draw? You know, some people are artists, they're not writers. Go with what you're good at. That's why you have those gifts and talents. Would you stay in the lines? Or would you color outside the lines? You know, when you're driving your car down the road, you want to stay in the lines. But all the greatest inventors, all the big, out-of-the-box thinkers, they don't stay in the lines. We wouldn't have all the amazing inventions we had if we did. That's a lot to think about, isn't it? Suppose someone gave you, instead of a pen, they gave you a life to write for yourself. You don't know how many extraordinary moments you have left in your life. And I invite you not to waste one single one of them. Go boldly forth, writing the story of your life. It's never too late to start being the author of your life. Who else can do it? How free do you want to be? I want to be so free that nothing can stop me. You know, the cartoon Maxine, the old lady with the wrinkles, and she gives all this great advice. Well, this is her motto to live by, and there's a reference to alcohol in here. So if alcohol's not your thing, put whatever your thing is, okay? She says, life should not be a journey to the grave with the intention of arriving safely in an attractive and well-preserved body. Rather, skid in sideways with chocolate in one hand, a martini in the other hand, bodily thoroughly used up, worn out, screaming, "Woo, what a ride!" I had to moderate that woohoo. I didn't want to blow your eardrums out, right? You know, when I was young, I wanted to change the world. I was enthusiastic. I thought I could do it. And then life happened. It was harder than I thought. But it's not too late to change your world, my friends. It's not too late to begin living the kind of life that you want to live, and live it right now. This is Chicken Soup for the Soul. And this is words that were written on a tomb of an Anglican bishop in the crypts at Westminster Abbey. When I was young and free and my imagination had no limits, I dreamed of changing the world. As I grew older and wiser, I discovered the world would not change. So I shortened my sights some and decided to change only my country. But that too seemed immovable. As I grew into my twilight years, in one last desperate attempt, I settled for changing only my family, those closest to me, but they would have none of that. And now as I lie on my deathbed, I suddenly realized if I'd only changed myself first, Then, by example, I could have changed my family. From their inspiration and encouragement, I would then have been better able to help my country. And who knows, I may have even changed the world. If we want to change our world, we start with ourselves. Stop focusing on resentment and anger and judgment. Stop arguing for your limitations, for your doubts and your worries and your lack and your fears. We can rise up above any limitation. As you begin to write the story of the rest of your life, I see for you that it's a masterpiece, an absolute masterpiece. And so I ask you one more time, how free do you want to be? Namaste. Thank you.